Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on the new announcement of the Egyptian award that will be given for the government excellence that is under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and how this will be helping in the economic reform program that the country and the government is undergoing. And joining us here in the studio to shed more light on this issue is Dr. Tamer Rady, the professor and chair of the Department of Economics at Ain Shams University. Dr. Rady, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Pleased to be with you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start with our topic of discussion, checking out some of the headlines, and the top story making the news today is President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurating a number of national mega projects in the governorates of Suez and South Sinai. Now, the projects include a new factory in the Suez Steel Company, a new factory for marble and granite, 239 housing buildings, 2 electricity stations, and a new naval dock for Sumed Company. Now, speaking during the ceremony, President al-Sisi noted that the development of the road of Sharm el-Sheikh tunnel was planned to avoid hundreds of accidents and previous problems stemming from floods. Now, this is the main story making the news today here in Egypt. But now, before we start our discussion, let's check out this report regarding the Prime Minister, Mustafa Madbouli, saying that the government is working to achieve economic reform and growth, stability and sustainability. Let's check out this report, and we'll be right back to talk about this with Dr. Rady.
Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli reiterated that the government is continuing its utmost efforts with the aim of achieving economic reform and sustainable development, with the active participation by the private sector, civil society and all international partners in development. The Prime Minister made these remarks in a speech he delivered during a celebration of the Egypt Government Excellence Award under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, in the presence of the Planning Minister Hala Said and the United Arab Emirates Minister of Cabinet Affairs and the future Mohammed El-Gergawi. Madbouli said that the government has come a long way in providing a suitable business climate via legislative and institutional reforms. He also pointed out the infrastructural projects being carried out in Egypt and the new mechanisms created to encourage the private sector to participate in development efforts. In this regard, the Prime Minister highlighted the launch of Egypt's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which aims to establish partnership with local and foreign private sectors, as well as to engage in cooperation with the international sovereign funds and direct investment funds. The UAE delegation attended the ceremony in Cairo, marking the announcement of the Egypt Government Excellence Award. For his part, Minister Gergawi said the announcement of Egypt Government Excellence Award winners is an important milestone in the ongoing strategic governance partnership between the UAE and Egypt. He also said the award was the culmination of tireless efforts made by joint task forces who worked together diligently for more than a year to accomplish one of the key pillars of the partnership agreement, which aims at ensuring cooperation and exchange of expertise. During the celebration, Madbouli announced the winners of the award, which was launched at the end of Egypt's Conference of Government Excellence in Cairo in July last year. The strategic partnership between the UAE and Egypt in the field of government modernization translates the UAE's vision under the leadership of His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan for fostering cooperation and partnership between brotherly Arab countries. The UAE minister added that this comes in line with the directives of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Vice President and Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai. He noted that the UAE has a consistent and genuine approach that forms the nature of its relations with brotherly countries based on giving and building bridges of communication that ensure social welfare, safety, happiness, and a dignified living. The award includes 2 categories: Institutional Excellence Awards and Individual Excellence Awards. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Planning, Follow-up and Administrative Reform announced extending the enrollment period for the competition of Egypt Award for Government Services applications up to August the 31st of 2019. The competition comes in light of the government's quest to become a digital society in order to provide digital services in simple and affordable ways at any time and anywhere for all Egyptian citizens.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off our discussion right away. Dr. Rady, now talking about the economic reform program, everybody understands it mainly through the working on the taxations, the national mega projects, the factories, the industries, dealing and lifting subsidies and all of these sort of measures. But also now Egypt is awarding for an award for government excellence in collaboration with the United Arab Emirates. Now, how is an Egyptian government excellence award going to be helping in an economic reform program? How are they correlated?
Well, the correlation is so big in economic theory. 40, 50 years ago, a lot of research started coming out, and it has been developing since then at an exponential rate that correlates what we refer to as the quality of institutions to economic growth and economic development. Now, what do you mean by quality of institutions? Well, bureaucracy, for example. That's one quality. And then you can go over to the procedural stuff at the administrative level, and then you can go into corruption and to fight corruption. And all those elements combined together would go into shaping a government that is efficient, that takes rational economic decisions, drafts rational economic policy, and achieves its goals faster. So therefore, quality of institutions at all levels became very important. And we have developed several indexes to measure the quality of institution. We have been correlating that to elements of growth and development, and it appears that they are very, very closely correlated.
Yes. Well, you pinpointed a lot of issues that were high on the agenda of the Egyptian citizens' demands to actually fix and deal with the bureaucracy, deal with the corruption, dealing with all the red tape. Now, how far do you feel that we have come along to eliminate these obstacles, or at least, well, slow it down for the best part of it?
Well, the idea of the Excellence in Government Award started probably more than 14 years ago, I guess. And I can shed some light on it. Now, how it started was they wanted to find distinguished service centers for the government that deals directly with the citizens, and say, well, this one can be ranked as #1, as an enhancement to others to develop on their excellence standards. And then to also seek individuals and to find the individual middle manager or upper management in government that also qualify for excellence in service. To go through both, both have their different separate standards. Let's start, for example, by a middle manager or an upper leadership in government. What are you going to measure? So 12, 14 years ago, they started for measuring their psychometric talents, a complete psychometric assessment. And it became the very first database of psychometric characteristics of upper and middle management in Egyptian government. And then you went on and measured using top-of-the-line measuring tools, imported, adapted for cultural differences, to find the managerial talents. Hence, you have put your hands on the problem. For example, inability to work in teams, communication problems, and others. And by applying those standards, you had a database that allows you to understand common managerial problems in and within the Egyptian high-ranking government officials system. And then you started scanning a lot of government service centers and government websites that offer services for citizens directly, interacting with citizens. And you started ranking them according to excellence standards. Just by doing that and spreading the knowledge, you are enhancing and advancing and pushing more to adapt excellence standards. That in itself, by enhancing both, putting the right man in the right place according to complete psychometric and managerial assessment, putting a procedure manual that sets the standard for excellence, cutting down the red tape, getting rid of bureaucracy. And within it are elements of, by increasing e-government as well, hand in hand, of fighting corruption, because you are reducing the number of people that would deal with the citizen, the number of employees going through the internet and interactivity, and hence, less corruption. So hopefully all of those would add and result in a higher economic growth, a better and more efficient government.
Well, Dr. Rady, you've pointed out, and you hit it on the nail, because a lot of the talk is usually referred to, oh, that minister, he was good, but the main problem was with the middle management. And as you mentioned, well, talking about psychometric and managerial assessments, the ability to work in teams and to communicate to all branches and all parts of the organization, whatever it may be. Now, a lot of the middle management are mainly adults, and some of these things, they either have it or not, and maybe even some are susceptible to training and they could change and modify their own skills. But a lot of people are saying, well, it is a cultural thing, and still to eliminate all the sort of issues and obstacles related to middle management, it's going to take a generation to fix and replace. Is it that true? Is it true that we'll actually have to take such a long time to eliminate any sort of obstacles for the middle management, caused by the middle management?
Yes. Well, that has its roots in history. If you go back to the 60s, and then what happened during those days is the law became one that encourages everybody to be appointed in government. And you guaranteed every college graduate a place in government. And hence, government became a source for providing jobs for those who can't find jobs anywhere else. In a way, I guess, if you look at this whole era, what you ended up with is an overcrammed, very unproductive government sector that suffers what we refer to in economics of having a lot of employees with really nothing to do. And in economic theory, what the theory says is if you get rid of some of them, well, you are going to be more efficient and your productivity would actually increase. And the idea is, in a social environment like the one we have in here, you just can never do that. And I guess when it was 2007, 2008, we almost had about 5.6 million government employees, with a ratio of 1 to 12. One government employee to every 12 citizens. That's one of the highest ratios worldwide. And what the government did early 2004 was it said, well, listen, we can't fire anybody out, so what we're going to do is we are just going to stop hiring. And we're going to find alternative ways to see, the relative short-term contracts if we really need somebody. And let people retire gradually. A huge setback came in after the revolution of 2011. And what happened then was a lot of people demonstrated, everybody wants to get fixed in their position, and you ended up getting another million. So basically what you did from 2004 to 2011 was wiped out, and you had to start all over again. Now, the government realized that they had to start over, and they went ahead and did a couple of things. Well, first, they went back to the policy of we're not going to hire anybody anymore, all right? And we're going to wait for people to retire gradually. And we're going to set example for others, and we are also going through the new civil servants law to give people the opportunity, if they wish, to retire early. Combine all of that with reforms. You try to reform, you went back to applying the Excellence in Government Awards, which have stopped after the revolution for a few years, but was very popular before that, and actually helped shape an idea about the real problems in a very scientific way that the government would have to tackle when it comes to either productivity or the excellence standards with service sectors. And if you look at what happened throughout the last 3-4 years, well, you can sense that a lot of government service centers have actually been reformed. A lot of police stations giving out, all the DMVs, the Department of Motor Vehicles licenses and driver's license and all of that. Well, they became better. Insurance and hospitals and other stuff. I'm very happy that they went back to continue with the award. I'm very happy that it gets such publicity so that everybody takes it as an example. And I'm sure of its economic outcome, it will be more efficiency.
Yes. Well, if we break that down to a few steps, wait for a gradual retirement and not hiring freshly graduate students on becoming permanent government employees. Now, do you feel that the private sector is strong enough and big enough to absorb a big percentage of most of these fresh graduates and just soak up so as to not create a high unemployment rate?
Yes, indeed. When you look again at history, you will find that there has been a major transformation in the size of the Egyptian private sector, its contribution to GDP. And what is happening now is not an economic problem per se, as it is a cultural problem of relying on government. What you want to do is you want to get rid of that culture of a secure job in government. And that's the biggest challenge, actually. But does the private sector, and is the private sector capable? Yes, of course it's capable. And I am also stressing that the idea of having a large public sector as a job provider has vanished, not just worldwide, and even in Egypt. And now nobody is going to go back to this kind of rhetoric that we need a public sector to employ our people. And I'm glad that this ideology has decreased because it has proven as a failure.
Yes. Well, another sort of ideology that has been introduced over at least the past 5 years has been the entrepreneurship and the startups, and people are becoming owners of their own projects and businesses. Now, do you feel that that is taking a big portion of the Egyptian citizens, the freshly graduated citizens, to actually operate themselves and actually have and own their own businesses and employ themselves?
Yes, the culture of entrepreneurship has been stressed on. If you look at Egyptian universities, you'll find a lot of entrepreneurship, soft skills teaching, a lot of guest speakers that come over to the university, talk to the students of the importance of relying on their own. So the culture is there, changing gradually, gaining popularity within our young students. But then they also want some economic backup, Soft skills don't do everything if the job itself is not there. And to make jobs available, I guess the President sees his initiative to fund and provide funds for small and medium enterprises. A couple of years ago, he announced this, and he made the funds available. And he had about 200 billion Egyptian pounds. Yeah, for young people who would want to come up with a very credible startup idea to find its support. So then it's not all about just the training, it's also about making it available through proper economic incentives. And we're trying to create that gradually.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're now also joined over the phone by Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Ambassador Bayoumi, can you hear us, sir?
Yes, how are you?
I'm very well. Ambassador Bayoumi, now, how would you evaluate the launching of the Egypt Government Excellence Award in collaboration with the United Arab Emirates? How important do you rate it, and how effective do you think this award will boost the competitiveness and the level of excellence between different governmental institutions?
I see it's very positive step. This is not the first time we take such an initiative. I have witnessed this during Dr. Ahmed Dawish when he was a minister in the cabinet, and we witnessed it in the Opera House several times. And I was in the point to promote some of my colleagues for such a prize. And it's very good. You are sending a positive message to all government employees and partners in order to make their job better and better. And for us as citizens also, we see that a good employee is well treated, and it's encouraging the bureaucracy in order to do its good job. Of course, if you ask any investor about what are the main obstacles in any country like Egypt, of course there are many details, but the most important problem for an investor is the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy in its good sense and its bad sense also. We need good bureaucracy. We need to encourage our members of the government in order to do the job in a better way and faster way, because now we are really watching that the whole world is developing. Egypt is developing. The question is not developing. The question is how fast are you going? The speed is very important now, and you have to do your job very quickly and in a correct time. Such an initiative, I hope it can be repeated here and there, everywhere in the government and the other institutions in the public sector, also in the private sector. And we have to mention those people who are doing their good jobs. And it is, after all, the environment of our development and our trade and our investment is very important, and it depends in many things. Main thing is human resources and how we are spending our time and investing on the human resources also.
Your Excellency, now this award is held under the auspices of President Sisi and obviously in collaboration with the government of the United Arab Emirates. How would you evaluate this collaboration between Egypt and the United Arab Emirates in establishing this award and rewarding the institutions as well as the individuals working there?
It is very important to engage other partners, mainly in the Arab world. You know that we have a big Egyptian community in the Gulf, in Libya, in Algeria, in Jordan, and we want to show the responsibility of the governments in the Arab world, that we have good production of our education, good production of our training, and calling the Arab world in order to use our workers more and more in many ways. I hope that I'm fighting for this in the Arab League, by the way, because I feel when I am in the Gulf sometimes I feel that I am not in an Arab state. Most of the Gulf is Indians and Far Eastern employees, and we want to present that we are proud of 11 million Egyptians working abroad, in America, in EU, in the Arab world and everywhere. And this means that we can say that we are producing good education results. If they were not well educated, they will never can continue working in this very competitive market and make a transfer of $26 billion to Egypt. We want to show this success to our partners. The Emirates is a good choice. I hope that this can continue and can be repeated also with Kuwait or the Saudi Arabia, with Algeria, with all the Arab countries, and even all the EU countries who are hosting millions of Egyptians working in a very good condition.
Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Now, Dr. Rady, you've mentioned the Egyptian Central Bank and how it was offering the 200 million to help establish the SMEs. Now, this has been going on for a few years now. How would you evaluate the performance of the Egyptian Central Bank supporting the SMEs? Do you feel that the SMEs now are creating some sort of a noticeable percentage of support to the Egyptian economy, or is it still a bit early to see it?
Well, it is a bit early to judge, but what you can judge is the number of startups, and that's a very good indicator of the performance. And what you notice is the number of startups have been increasing steadily within the last 2 years, especially throughout the last 6 months even. If you look at that, it has been improving. So number of startups is a very good indicator. When do you get to see the benefits of this? Well, investment decisions are always ones that take time, and their effects are always lagging effects. So you wait for 3, 4, 5 years, and you see the reflection on the rate of growth of GDP. You can, of course, sense a little bit that, well, with a 5.6 GDP growth rate today, it is very impressive as compared to where we were 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
You know, you remember 2011, you were growing at 1.8. And 2012, 13, 14, you were doing about 2.1, 2.2. And that's an era we don't want to remember, but you know, to recover that fast is a miracle in itself.
Dr. Rady, now you've mentioned, like, I'm sorry I'm going on a bit for the SMEs, but you've mentioned that people with startups, they need some sort of a background in economics and business. Now, maybe your students, they do have that economics and business background, but a lot of people who don't, they actually do start up their own businesses, but then sooner or later they file for bankruptcy, or they just shut the whole project down. Now, what can be done to educate the entrepreneurs to have this sort of business prowess and the know-how in actually starting the business, to encourage them, even people with no idea or background in how to start a business and sustain it?
Well, but I guess you know, the whole world have seen a shift towards entrepreneurship education. Now, entrepreneurship does not necessarily indicate that if you are studying economics or business that you are going to become, you know, a better entrepreneur. But the idea is entrepreneurship has to be taught to every student in every college and even at the school level. And then we started witnessing a number of educational institutions overseas that label themselves as entrepreneurship universities. So if you are studying dentistry or medicine, if you are studying any type of science, they are preparing you for the real world. So they are giving you the set of skills that would help you to start your own business, or to be even a more functioning person within the business that you are going to join. And they have had standards for that, and they have had ability to rank universities among them their entrepreneurship abilities. We started applying this gradually over here. Social Fund for Development have launched some years ago an initiative that gathers all university students, give them free classes about how to start your business, in which line, what are the procedures, who's going to come and check out what you're doing, how to deal with municipalities and other things. And for anybody that attended that, he had a privilege in getting funds from the Social Fund. And that was enormous success.
Yes.
And it resulted in some small entrepreneurs that gained a lot of initiative because of this.
Dr. Rady, now going back to some of the measures being undertaken by the Egyptian government to sort of revolutionize how the process, the governmental process, the operations within the institutions. There's a lot of talk about joining the digital world, digitizing everything. Now, we are on the path to achieve that, and that will help speed up a lot of the bureaucracy, eliminate actually bureaucracy, speed up and have a pacey process for the operations. But that would still create some sort of a problem, or maybe an advantage, for eliminating a lot of the people involved, a lot of the middlemen, a lot of the middle management. It will put a lot of people out of work, but at the same time, it might be more efficient and effective. How can we find a balance so as to achieve the maximum advantages and the benefits of it, and eliminate any sort of downward symptoms?
Well, there are a couple of ways to look at it. Well, from the very first, the first angle you can look at that from is the enormous economic efficiency that results from joining databases that government has from all those different agencies. So if you are filing for taxes, if you are registering property, and if those two talk together, if you go to the judicial section, and if you have lawsuits, and if everything talks to, if all those databases talk to each other, the economic efficiency is unbelievable. Some simple ideas, of course, have been hindering development. For example, the inability to prove ownership. Now, here is a digital revolution can help that, right? The inability to check on your taxes, exactly quantify how much you earn. What you have noticed is within the last few years with the digital payments and all of that, well, some more people are becoming, tax responsible. It did turn over tax revenues. And the other angle is, well, are machines going to replace people? Well, yeah, well, they can, and that is not a loss in economic efficiencies. You can retrain people to do other stuff. In fact, you are going to have higher output because of that. So, so the idea is, are you able to find the replacement, provide the training? We're still a little bit far away from the idea of, it's going to get rid of people. It's not really. But what you want to do is, you want government agencies that are able to keep proper databases that are connected together, guaranteed to increase your performance.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, definitely there is a lot of work that is being done to actually help boost the performance of the governmental institutions and also the economic growth here in Egypt. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Economic reforms have helped strengthen growth, reduce unemployment, increase foreign exchange reserves, and put public debt on a downward path. The reforms, supported by a $12 billion loan from the IMF, are aimed at achieving more sustainable, inclusive, and private sector-led growth that would improve the living standards of all Egyptians. The country has achieved a primary budget surplus of 36 billion Egyptian pounds, a positive leap that has not been achieved in many years, all credited to the public financial turning points and efforts, fixing imbalances, reducing differences between income and expenses, and putting an end to the drain of resources. Thanks to the economic reform program established in July 2014 and started in 2016, the budget has reached a very positive level of performance by achieving a growing initial surplus, in addition to an increase in total investments to 1.17 trillion Egyptian pounds, with a growth of more than 26%. Also allocating 149 billion Egyptian pounds to support bread, ration goods, fuel, electricity and water. An IMF team visited Egypt last May to conduct the fifth and final review of Egypt's economic reform program, supported by the 3-year extended fund facility. The staff team and the Egyptian authorities reached a staff-level agreement on the fifth and final review of Egypt's economic program, which is supported by the IMF's extended facility. The IMF said over the last 3 years, the Egyptian authorities have carried out an ambitious homegrown reform program, which aimed to correct significant external and domestic imbalances. It said the authorities' efforts have been successful in achieving macroeconomic stabilization, a recovery in growth and an improvement in the business climate. According to the statement by the IMF, Egypt is on track to achieve its 3-year fiscal consolidation objective of 5.5% of GDP in the primary balance. Meanwhile, GDP growth accelerated from 4.2% in 2016-17 to 5.3% in 2017-18. Unemployment has declined from 12% to below 9%, and the current account deficit narrowed from 5.6% of GDP to 2.4%. The gross general government debt is expected to decline, according to the estimates, to about 85% of GDP in 2018-19 from 103% of GDP in 2016-17.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Rady. Now, in order, the whole point of actually establishing this award was to increase the level of performance, the competitiveness, the efficiencies of the institutions and the individuals working in there. Now, we learned that this initiative really started off during the time of Mr. Ahmed Darwish.
Yes.
And up until now, do you feel that there should be a system of frequent evaluation and frequent development of the individuals working within an institutions, the employees, the middle management, the higher management? What sort of criteria, what sort of evaluation? Is it done by the governmental institutions themselves? Is it done by the citizens receiving the services? How can we monitor and encourage and motivate the citizens and the employees working within these institutions?
Well, you know, there are so many different ways of doing this. For example, you know, countries that are so close to us in its bureaucratic setup, France. The story behind how France initiated its rules for hiring in government and public service is one that is so amusing. It started by a group of people that were jailed by the Germans during World War II. And they were from the French resistance. And what they thought to themselves was, well, we are in here and our country has collapsed because of bad government. So what we need is to build a system to select the proper government employee. And they went out after liberation and established the National School of Management for France. Now what that is it's open for everybody to apply. Almost 12 to 14,000, I guess, yearly apply from all ages, all degrees. They want to become government employees in middle management, and they only take 80. Can you imagine the number of exams that they will go through? And then they would go to a school up north, where the institute is in Strasbourg, and they would spend a year and a half studying. It's like a boarding school, and that will be what the French are doing to prepare a civil servant. Now, not all governments have to do that, of course, but what that tells you is you have to pay complete attention to what set of characteristics are there for the person you want to hire in government. And I hope that the new law for civil service establishes some of that. It's a long way for an overcrowded government system with a lot of people that are really into the diminishing marginal productivity phase. But my hope is it would gain momentum, and it is going to take some time to improve.
It's going to take some time. When we go a long way, what are we talking about? 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
I hope much faster than that. You know, you have the 2030 look for Egypt,
Yes.
but by that time the ratio would have been towards much better ratio, because remember that our population is growing really fast.
Yes.
And if government is not as growing as fast, the time is in your favor.
Yes. Well, Dr. Rady, you've mentioned the Egypt vision for 2030, working on sustainable development, along with the whole vision for Africa for achieving sustainable development 2063. Now, in order to operate and put our sort of economic reform measures in line with the sustainable development, how is that affecting it positively and negatively for our economic reform? We will develop a lot of procedures, a lot of measures that will increase productivity and efficiency and output. At the same time, will there be a drawback? Will we have to get rid of a lot of existing sort of industries or personnel or machinery that is not in line with the sustainable development?
Well, when it comes to sustainability, yes, everybody has to pay the price, but remember, the whole world is going there, and the benefits from being sustainable far outweighs the cost, and that's the idea of sustainability by definition. All right. So if we go down that path, I don't think we are in the position of losing any productivity yet. But when it comes to aligning ourselves with 2030 vision or the African 2063, let me remind you of something. We started our, a very successful economic reform program in 2004. We had our own devaluation. We had liberalized a lot of things, including the financial sector. And the rewards came really fast, because we have reached in 2007 or 2008 a 7.2% growth rate. And that came in after only a short period of applying the reforms to 2004 to 2007. And the rate of inflow for foreign direct investment was unprecedented. The number of tourists were unprecedented. And what happened is remarkable, because it proves one thing: you've done it once, you can do it again. And if you look at a country coming out in 2011 from a revolution, and a couple of years or 3 years of absolute chaos, and then to start picking up your breath in 2013, 2014, by 2019 you are doing a 5.6%. You are doing a 7% or 7.5% unemployment. That's even better than what we had in 2011, 9.5%.
Yes.
You're doing a 5.6% GDP growth rate. You're doing a 7% inflation rate. Now, your ability to proceed is pretty obvious to any foreign direct investor from anywhere in the world. This country is full of opportunities. Somebody has to use it, and use it fast. And early ones that come would be rewarded the most.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Well, Dr. Rady, now you do highly value the economic reform program that the country has been undergoing for the past few years. Now, what can still be done to make it even better? Are we talking about the ratio between imports and exports? Are we talking about inflation? Are we talking about the value of the Egyptian pound? Are we talking about investing in SMEs? Are we talking about the energy sector that we should mainly sort of focus our main direction in? Is it the tourism, the main source of foreign currency, along with the expansion of the Suez Canal? What do you think are the points we need to really focus on to increase this process of reform?
Of course, all of those aspects are equally important. But one in particular stands out, and that was the very first obstacle, and one that you have mentioned: energy. Now, what happened here is, if you remember, 2013, 2012, 2014, electricity, we had a lot of problems. If you want dedicated industry, you need energy. Well, guess what? We have more than what we need right now. So then that was one problem that was tackled right away. Right? And major projects came up, your kilowatt productions, gigawatt, whatever, tremendously, that now you have had oil and gas exploration and new things that are very promising came in. Now, your second attention would always jump into local investment. While a lot of people would focus on foreign direct investment, of course it is incredibly important, but foreign direct investment is the most sensitive. So when you're trying to attract foreign direct investment, work, do whatever you want, but don't forget the local. And what we are witnessing right now is, as I mentioned earlier, number of startups have been slightly increasing. Credit for the industrial sector has been slowly and surely increasing. Do whatever you can to increase local investment participation.
Well, what can be done to really work on the local and domestic level of production in sort of, as you've mentioned, the foreign investment is quite sensitive to whatever is going on, but the domestic and local ones can be some sort of a constant factor within the Egyptian economy. How can we reach this sort of sustainability and being constantly domestically productive?
Well, there has been a lot of initiatives to solve investors' problems recently, and it has been increasing also within the last year. That you have heard about mega projects in which government is facilitating its advancement, a lot of investor problems that government agencies have been interfering and assigning people to solve it. Several attempts to modify and improve investment law has occurred in Egypt. You want to focus more on some of the problems that small investors face, from registration, from the implying and applying the one-day, shop for all registration for companies, taxes, solvency problems, things that take time, and red tape and bureaucracy. Those are ones you want to tackle. Economic incentives. One of them, of course, we have heard a couple of days ago for exporters. Export subsidies are on the rise, and that was very good news for a lot of them. It has been working wonderfully for the last few years. And that's the kind of things that you need to focus on.
So it's mainly really focusing on the private sector, if we may say.
Absolutely.
So. Well, if we're talking about the public sector, the governmental sector, they are quite mindful for the Egypt Government Excellence Award. What can be done for the private sector? I mean, you might not be able to give an award, or can you? But you talked about the taxations, the exemptions, the economic and financial benefits. Can you be more detailed about this? How can we increase the appetite of the domestic businessman, the investor, the local ones, to really full-heartedly put it all on the table, risk it all, and aggressively attack the market?
Well, let me show you what happened within the last few years. Again, 2014, 2% growth rate. What do you think happened to make that growth rate increase to 5.6? The very first thing is a lot of government spending and on mega projects. You said you want to encourage them to participate. Well, to participate with uncertainty is very hard. So somebody had to step in. And what the government did, they stepped in. And they said, well, listen, we're going to do a new capital. Now, who wants to join in? A lot of businesses came in.
Yes.
We are going to move the presidential palace, the parliament house, and we are going to move a lot of embassies into the new capital. And that's where they're going to be. So if you want to live next door, you have to pay a lot of money. And hence, a lot of investors already started building there. So what the government did in the plain desert, established a whole new city, not paying anything, just a concept and the political will. And then, of course, if you live in Egypt, you would notice that the number of projects happening in every street, in every corner, in every suburb. And those are all government initiatives. And those are not carried out by government companies. They are carried out by subcontractors. And one of the main reasons for that 5.6 growth rate is that government spending.
Yes.
And that's one thing that was made after a couple of revolutions to start everybody working again.
Yes.
And that's the main thing.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, definitely the government is undertaking a lot of big and important steps to work on the economic reform program, but it's still a lot needs to be done, and it still comes down to the Egyptian citizen, the Egyptian businessman, to actually push it forward and even reach higher for the aspirations of the whole nation. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Dr. Tamer Rady, Professor and Chair of the Faculty of Economics at Ain Shams University. Dr. Rady, it was a pleasure having you with us tonight.
Thanks, I was happy to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.